Shalom, friends. It is an honor to be able to welcome into our studio my very good friend, Nick Vujicic, who is, at this point, really an old friend of Israel 365, I can say. And we've connected many, many times. And I want to share with you, Nick, something that I don't think I've told. But at the last time, we met at the NRB, the National Religious Broadcasters Convention, and Nick honored us with his presence and speaking. But that was a year ago. There was an NRB this past February, a couple of months ago, and we had a woman with us who was volunteering with Israel 365, and she had had a hard year. Her husband had died, and we organized a room for the hostages, a war room we called it, and she was volunteering with us, but she kind of didn't really want to be there. She was in a dark place. And we had these dog tags for the hostages. I'm wearing a yellow ribbon for the hostages, but there was dog tags for the hostages. And you asked her to put it on you. And she put on the dog tag on you. And, you thanked her. You asked her to give you a hug. Her name is Trina Oshman. Okay. And she said afterwards that she never felt so alive since her husband had died. Wow. And she put that dog tag on you.
Wow. Wow.
You're such an inspiration to people, to myself, to millions, hundreds of millions around the world, but you probably don't even realize the impact that you make on people. And even on behalf of Trina, I want to say thank you for everything that you do for Israel 365 and for the Jewish people and for the state of Israel. Thank you for being with us today.
Rabbi Tully, thank you. Shalom to everyone. It's my honor and privilege to sit here in the studio with you, and anywhere that we can partner with you, be on the stage for Israel 365, aligning Christians and Jews in love and in unity, especially in such times of turmoil right now. It's so important. And thank you for having me and loving on me, and many, many more years ahead with Nick Vujicic and Israel 365.
And then you mentioned unity, being together in unity. So, a favorite verse probably of everyone is Psalms, where it says, how good is it when brothers dwell in unity, Psalms 133. We're going to talk a little bit about Psalms. And it's unusual for a rabbi, for a pastor to be discussing the Bible together. Yeah. And what is it about Psalms that you love the most?
What I love, Rabbi Tully, mostly about this is the unifying factor of seeing first and foremost the simplicity, sincere heart of King David writing these Psalms in the ups and downs. He doesn't go silent. He shares his troubles. He shares his grief. He shares his fears. And we can see that no matter what he's feeling, he expresses what's going on in his heart and his mind. And he knows that God is listening and God is faithful, and God is always going to be faithful to Israel. And especially right now, I think more Christians and Jews need to come on those unifying Psalms to acknowledge his goodness, acknowledge his faithfulness together, and believe for the future of Israel, believe for the future of the Jewish people here in Israel.
Right. King David expresses the highest emotions when he is jubilant, and he talks about how depressed he is in the valley of the shadow of death. But throughout Psalms, he is close to God, no matter what.
That's right. I like also the reference of how we have faith like a child, where we can come to God like his children. And I think oftentimes we feel God is far away. We are very more solutions-based. When is this going to end? And I can't imagine all the pain and suffering. And if you've gone personally through loss, I want you to know that God is faithful. And in this time of trouble, in this time of mourning, there are times for war, there's times of mourning, there's times of loss, and there's times of jubilee. And I believe that the best years for Israel are ahead. And I want you to know, to never give up. Know that God is faithful, and he listens to us and our expressions. And no matter what ups and downs we have in our life, we know that nothing changes the faithfulness of God.
Right. And it's hard, though. It's hard when you're, a lot of times something interesting about Psalms. So when Iran attacked Israel with hundreds of ballistic missiles, and we went to bed that night and weren't sure, literally, if we were going to be there in the morning. Some people were very anxious. I wasn't, I just felt like there's nothing we could do. Sometimes, you go in a safe room, right? This was even beyond going into a safe room. There's nothing we could have done to protect our own families. And it was a very, very surreal and anxious kind of event. You know what was the number one search term in Google in Israel?
What's that?
Tehillim, which is Psalms. in
Wow.
Hebrew.
Wow.
The people of Israel, the Jewish people, turned not only to God, but to Tehillim, the Psalms, in order to approach God. We know that there's no, the best way, I should say, to approach God is through King David's Psalms.
I love
Is
it.
that amazing?
It is amazing. And I want everyone to remember that your provider is not a man. Your provider is God. Your protector, your refuge, your comfort, your strength, it's Him. And so keep on going through the Psalms to be reminded that we all go through ups and downs, but He remains the same, and He is your shield. He is your fortress, and He will never leave you.
Yeah, I want to ask you a question because a lot of people over the centuries have written poems to God, right? Yet there's something special about approaching God through King David's book of Psalms that has endured the test of time. So, what is it about not Psalms, but about King David that you think people connect with so much?
I think it's realizing that he was once a shepherd boy. And a lot of people who would look at David would not imagine how could God use a shepherd boy. When you look at him looking at Goliath and seeing the courage and the faith, it's because he had that, I would call it a relationship, an open communication to know that it's not him fighting, but God will give him the strength. And I think that faith and courage is something that we all need. You know, me going through depression and attempted suicide at age 10, not believing that there would ever be a plan or a purpose or a future for me. I think it's when we have the courage to believe that there is a future. It's when we have that courage to believe that we're not alone. Even though we feel alone, we're not alone.
Right.
I think faith and courage.
Yeah. Coming from you as a Christian and hearing your amazing experiences and your story overcoming challenges like not only depression, but physical, emotional challenges, physical challenges. So, and saying that it comes from Psalms, which, we take a lot of pride in. Psalms were actually written here.
Right.
Not even that far away from where we sit right now. Correct. King David fought with Goliath in the Valley of Elah, which is, we could get in the car and meet in 5 minutes. Wow. And so the Psalms really are something that mean a lot to the Jewish people. But we know what it says in Psalms is that there's going to be sort of this dance between Jews and Gentiles in the end of days. And I'll give you an example from Psalms 126. Talks about, God says, Shir Malot B'shuv Adonai et Shivat Zion Hayinu Kecholmim. That a song of ascents, when I return the captives of Zion, hostages, or symbolically the Jewish people, the captives from Zion, when I return them to Zion, we will be like dreamers. And then it says that the nations, in a verse or two later, it says, then the nations will recognize what God is doing. Then they will say amongst the nations, they will say, Az Yamru Bagoyim. Then the Goyim, the nations will say, Higdil Adonai La'asot Imela. God is doing great things with the Jewish people, returning them. And then you know what the next verse is? It says, Higdil Adonai La'asot Imanu Hayinu Semechim, which means, yes, God is doing great things for us. It switches tenses. First, it says the nations will say, God is doing great things for you. In the very next verse, the Jewish people respond, yes, God is doing great things for us. So sometimes it seems like when King David is describing this great and awesome day where the Jewish people will return on Aliyah to Israel, the Gentiles will be the one encouraging us and saying, God is doing great things for you. And only then will we be able to say, you know what, they're right. These people who have for centuries persecuted us, right, are now saying God is doing great things for you. And we say we can only hear it when it's coming from the Gentiles. And then we realize God is doing great things for us. It's so encouraging, Nick, when you come here to Israel to encourage us to recognize God and to recognize King David and to recognize Psalms. We then can say God is doing great things for us.
I love that. Rabbi, the last thing I would ever add to that, because I echo every word you're saying, it's amazing that this is a moment in time where it feels like even as well Israel is in an impossible situation where God will protect Israel, Israel will succeed, and to a point of impossibility that no man can take credit for. And so God does want the glory. And it's going to be so miraculous, I believe, in those end of days, that everyone of every nation, of every tongue, will see how much God does love Israel, how much he will protect her and the people when they trust in him with all their heart. I love Proverbs 3, verse 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not upon your own understanding. Acknowledge him in all of your ways, and he'll direct your path. And I just hope that this little conversation that we've had has planted some seeds of faith and peace and hope in you today. We love you and thank you for your love, Rabbi Tully, and keep on doing what you're doing. And may God continue to give you strength and favor in Israel 365. And may our friendship continue to blossom and bring fruit as more Christians and Jews align and unify for the glory of God.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you.